We are gathered here this afternoon to celebrate the life and mourn the death of Ben Calvin, who was the husband of Lynn, father of Christopher and Joanna, brother of Drew, uncle of Carrie and Sarah, close friend of Kendall and Mark, member of this church since 1988. Based here in the sanctuary of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church, we form a community today of people from near and far whose lives have been touched by Ben. I'm Reverend Connie Grant, current minister of this congregation. Kendall Gibbons, friend of Lynn since they were in 8th grade together, and former minister of this congregation, shares the chancel with me. We gather in the remembrance of death to pay homage to the spirit of life. We come in grief because one whom we have loved is no longer among us. We gather also in gratitude, in praise, and in tribute. In the language of poetry, through various symbols and ideas of past and present, we turn now to the wisdom and long experience of humankind as we seek to establish in our minds and confirm in our memories the true quality of the life which is now fulfilled. Let the faiths and philosophies which sustain us meld into a unity of our most sacred humanness. Let the gifts of courage, wisdom, and thankfulness come to each of us and dwell among us today and in the days to come. May we know courage to face death and wisdom to speak openly and compassionately. May we be assured of the inspiration of dedication, the value of a human life, and the permanence of goodness. And now, in this time of grief, we light this flame of sharing, symbol of ongoing life. In this time when we search for consolation and serenity in the face of loss, we kindle this light as a sign of our hopeful quest for redeeming wisdom and healing love. And so let us be honest with death. Let us not pretend that it is less than it is. It is separation, it is sorrow, it is grief. But let us neither pretend that death is more than it is. As long as memory endures, his influence will be felt. It is not an end to love. Humanity's need for love from each of us is boundless. It is not an end to joy and laughter. Nothing would less honor a loving soul than to make our lives drab with excessive grief. Let us be honest with death, for in that honesty we will understand him better and ourselves more deeply.
The great 19th century agnostic Robert Ingersoll says this: "Before the sublime mystery of life and spirit, the mystery of infinite space and endless time, we stand in reverent awe. This much we know. We are at least one phase of the immortality of life. The mighty stream of life flows on, and in this mighty stream we too flow on, not lost, but each eternally significant. The Spirit never betrays the person who trusts it. Physical life may be defeated, but life goes on. Character survives, goodness lives, and love is immortal."
Benjamin Harold Calvin, Jr. was born on August 23, 1950, son of Ben Sr. and Betty Fay. Ben grew up as the oldest of 4 boys. His brother Drew Douglas was born in 1952, Peter Noel born in 1956, and Theodore Boone born in 1958. Peter and Theodore both died in recent years, and Drew survives. Ben Sr. came out of the depth of poverty in Hopkinsville, Kentucky on a 200-acre property, mostly woods and including 70 acres of farmland. Ben Sr. was born in a log cabin, and the family later had a 4-room house. Ben Sr. went on to become a major in the Air Force and to earn a master's degree in journalism. When the boys were growing up, the family lived for a time in Japan and in Germany when Ben Sr. was on deployment, and they traveled and went camping while they were there. There were also extended times when the family remained behind while Ben Sr. was on deployment and sometimes stayed with Betty Faye's family in Milwaukee. When Ben was growing up, the family was active in the Lutheran Church, and hence the playing of A Mighty Fortress by Martin Luther. Ben left home at 21 and remained close with his family of origin. The Kentucky land was always his heart home, and he eventually acquired most of the property, which will likely become the resting place for his ashes. Ben and Lynn met the day before her 17th birthday at a large gathering welcoming President Nixon home from his trip to China in 1972. Lynn was on her own in the crowd and was struggling to see over the heads of the people in front of her. Then, as Lynn recounts, this guy asked, "Do you want to get on my shoulders so you can see?" Lynn spent 45 minutes sitting on Ben's shoulders, and she notes that she was wearing a very short skirt, as was the fashion of the time. Ben asked for Lynn's phone number and called her for a date. On their first date at a fancy restaurant, he ordered a fancy entree, Chateaubriand, as Lynn noted in her journal at the time. On their second or third date, they were in the studio audience for Kendall's appearance on the local TV show It's Academic. As they were waiting, Ben offered to share his book, which happened to be Mad Magazine, since Lynn had neglected to bring one. Lynn is a fast reader, and she was impressed that as they read together, Ben was ready to turn the page at the same time that she was. Ben took Lynn to her senior prom. After she graduated from high school, they continued dating and became engaged, expecting to get married in a few years. But when Lynn became unhappy at the college she was attending and wanted to transfer after freshman year, the prospect of in-state tuition at William and Mary provided the incentive to get married sooner. They were married on August 4th, 1973, when Lynn was 18 and Ben was 22. Ben was a carpenter, and while Lynn finished college, Ben worked at the Newport News shipyard. Lynn went on to earn her master's degree in library science and moved back to the DC area. That would be that they both moved back to the DC area. Lynn found her first job, and Ben worked as a carpentry foreman and rose in construction management. By 1981, Lynn and Ben were ready to have children. Joanna was born in 1981 and Christopher in 1984. Kendall had become minister here in 1983, and in those years, Ben and Lynn and Kendall and her husband Mark visited back and forth. Ben's work had evolved to working with computers, doing construction estimates and scheduling for major projects. In 1988, Ben's company had an opening in Chicago, and the family prepared to move into their current house in Aurora. At a company party, Ben had way too much to drink and then decided to drive home. He had no change for the tolls and was pulled over by the state police. Kendall and Mark bailed him out. He was fired from his job the next day, and Ben never took another drink. With some understatement, Lynn says that the world righted itself. The 3-story house was a 6-flat, which they converted. And as Lynn says, they spent a lot of years fixing up a lot of stuff. After a year or so in the house, Kendall and Mark moved in, and the two families shared the house for the next 10 years until Kendall was called to another congregation. Ben worked contract gigs, and Joanna and Christopher grew up. Lynn says that Ben was always all about family. Christopher told me that Ben was always there for his family through good times and bad times. Christopher describes his father as a hard worker who took pride in careful craftsmanship. Ben worked on the house and taught Chris to always have the right tools and materials for the job at hand, and to measure twice and cut once as they worked on projects together. Ben was a Boy Scout leader, teaching the troop to tie knots and camp out. Ben went to all of Chris's sports activities, not only the games, but the practices too. Ben liked to ride bikes and shoot hoops with Chris. Ben took his family to visit the farm in Kentucky, and on one visit, Ben and the rest of the family were amused when Chris sat on a big rock that moved and turned out to be a big turtle instead of a big rock. Ben told stories about his childhood family and the land. Chris describes his father as old school, wanting to carry on traditions and share them with his children. Later, as he faced health challenges, Ben retired. When his vision allowed, Ben enjoyed driving sporty convertibles. Time and money were devoted to family-related travel and to caring for others. Lynn describes Ben as a voracious reader who read everything about everything. He was an autodidact who knew more about many things than most people did. Ben and Lynn always had things to talk about. Lynn emphasizes that she and Ben loved each other and took care of each other. Ben was smart, kind, and loving. Ben introduced his brother Drew to the music of the Beatles. Drew will play the Beatles song "In My Life" in tribute to Ben.
How much my brother really did contribute to my musical education when I was growing up, but he did. Not just the Beatles, but
You are blessed to have known Ben, blessed that he has been part of your lives. Your memories are sacred, a continued blessing. And so we hold Ben's picture in our mind's eye and his memory in our hearts. Let's take a moment now to send our blessings to him in silence. Ode to Joy was played at Ben and Lynn's wedding. It's appropriate to hear it now as we reflect that love is stronger than death, and that we are stronger for holding on to love. We belong to the eternal here and now. We did not begin when we were born. Our origin goes back to the beginningless beginning of all things. Our biography is the story of earth and sun and humankind. Do we end when we die? Something eternal is revealed in everything. Our brains and bodies are mosaics of the same unknown that underlies the light, the star, the sea. We do not know what it is, but we live in it, and we call it life. We belong to the oneness from which we have emerged.
The farmer poet Wendell Berry says this of his deceased friend: "He goes free of the earth. The sun of his last day sets clear in the sweetness of his liberty. The earth recovers from his dying. The hallow of his life remains in all that death leaves. Radiance knows him. Grown lighter than breath, he is set free in our remembering. Grown lighter than vision, he goes dark into the life of the hill that holds his peace. He's hidden among all that is and cannot be lost. The poet Antoine de Saint-Exupéry says, "It is never possible, in truth, to replace such a dear companion. Old friends cannot be created out of hand. Nothing can match the treasure of common memories. And it is idle, having planted an acorn in the morning, to expect that afternoon to sit in the shade of an oak." Therefore, replies the humanist philosopher Kenneth Patton, none but the callous will make little the sorrow of human hearts at the death of their beloved. There is no sure medicine for this ill, and those who love truly wish for none. We know our heartache as the necessary price of the joy of love and possession. The heavier our sorrow, the more has been that which is taken away. They who embrace and affirm life willingly invite grief as the risk taken in owning the fullness of life and companionship. We learn to possess our sorrows as the measure of our loves. And we will learn in this parting to dwell more constantly with him who is gone, bringing him into ourselves as the companion of our silence and solitude, even as he was once our outward companion. So the poignancy of these days in deepening us shall draw us closer to him, not take him further from us. Time will dull the pain and life will continue, but even the medicine of time is not sure. The only final healing is to create our peace within ourselves by possessing our sorrows in their fullness, by possessing our memories and finding in them strength. Be assured that what lies beyond the grave remains a mystery not susceptible of proof. Whether death is the end or the beginning, none of us can ever know until we ourselves set out upon that road which our friend has taken. The human mind has envisioned everything, from the shades beyond the river Styx to ineffable light to eternal joy. Whether individual consciousness survives, is transformed, or dissolves, no good person is ever dead when he is remembered in the minds of those who knew him with the affection we treasure for the memory of our friend. And of this degree of immortality, there can be no doubt. And we can believe in the very fiber of our beings that the greatest promises of life are not lies. The persistence of beauty and virtue, the power of honest love. Whatever remains of Ben's spirit is at peace and beyond all harm. As he was good, that goodness will be his guardian always. As he was loved, that love will attend him forevermore. And so there is finally only one thing required of us, and that is to take life whole, the bright and dark together, to live the life that is given us with courage and humor and truth. We have such a little moment out of the vastness of time for all our wondering and loving. Therefore, let there be no half-heartedness. Rather, let the soul be ardent in its pain, in its yearning, in its praise. Then shall peace enfold our days, and glory shall not fade from our lives.
And so may you be nourished and sustained by your memories. Remembering Ben, may you go forward with the knowledge that what we do with our lives matters not only to ourselves, but to those who share this earth with us and to those who will come after us. In the spirit of love we have gathered. In the spirit of love we go on. Life is eternal. Love is immortal. And as we extinguish the chalice flame, may we rekindle in our hearts an appreciation for the gifts of life and for other persons who share this life with us. May we always carry with us the light that Ben brought into our lives. Amen.